Hmm. Okay, we are talking to ourselves again, but I can't lie that I've been glued to the Epstein cover-up coverage on the internet because the corporate media is being forced to discuss just how bad the um, crimes were. And so now they're saying there was over 200 victims, but the government files have already gone public that there was over 1,000 victims of Epstein, and we are still waiting for Sarah Ransom's um, claims to get acknowledged. But she did an email to a reporter that she was friends with another Epstein victim who routinely was abused by Donald Drumpf at Epstein's New York City mansion in Manhattan. And then she had to retract the email, and the corporate media made a huge deal. The corporate state media basically was like, oh, she's not credible anymore. But then she fled to the UK, and in the UK, Sarah Ramson said, well, there was threats against my family and herself, and that's why she had to do the retraction. And then Katie Johnson um, was corroborated by the person who was um, like setting up her victimization. Another woman, um, and but the same thing happened to her, where her family was threatened, and or she was threatened, and her apparently her car was stolen the day she was supposed to give testimony, and whatever. So she's even her name, that name Katie Johnson, is not her real name, but people have figured out who she is and where she is and all that. But obviously, when you have the victims just having their lives ruined, um, then the cover up is, well, why is the government not? It's kind of like the ET, the whole UFO thing, where they're demanding the government reveal the truth about ET aliens. But obviously, when you have a huge military regime that's based on what Dr. Helen Caldicott calls missile envy. So, um, you know, Professor Cynthia Enloe, she has more than one book about how women are what really support the economy, whether it's through the, around the military bases, but these all these like free trade zones where you have young women doing the apparel industry, but also circuitry, circuit boards, electronics, and factory work, and then they're also doing the being trafficked and all that by the military bases. And so Cynthia Enloe's big point was, well, actually, the whole economy is dependent on the work of the young women. And the I was just listening to Planet Critical interview um, another feminist professor, Sylvia Frederici or something like that. Sylvia Frederici. I don't know who's her. She's Italian, but her first big claim was that women should be paid for doing housework, for being housewives. And well, if you think about it, I mean, whether having your costs covered is being paid, I don't know. But obviously, um this whole idea that um there needs to be wage equality and all that. But the big problem, of course, is that we have this environmental ecological crisis. And so this whole concept of civilization is relying on accelerating destruction of ecology. And so now the Arctic ice is vanishing fast, and the methane is accelerating into the atmosphere out of the Arctic, and this is being ignored. The aerosol masking effect means the reduction of burning coal actually heats up Earth even more, and the reduction of diesel. So we are in this accelerating biological annihilation, and that is a um, term in Google Scholar. So you have like the whole podcast podsphere or whatever they call it, but people can make all these claims, but then they don't use peer-reviewed research. Research. You can use Google Scholar to find peer-reviewed research that corroborates your claims. And so, whether it's about the pandemic or the ecological crisis, I mean, people should be, if they're trying to make a claim, they need to try to engage with the peer-reviewed research on. Google Scholar is just a database of the academic published research. And so obviously on the internet, the truth is a popularity contest. And so people just ignore the science, that our whole society is based on science. And instead we have this religion of technology, and we can then try to ignore the ecological crisis. And so people are fixated on AI, which obviously is a big threat to people's jobs and everything. But meanwhile, growing food at scale is a big problem because there's 90 million people in Africa in acute food insecurity. And this is being either ignored or made much worse by the loss of U.S. aid funding for food emergencies. And luckily, the Maine senator Susan, I always forget her name, but anyway, so they're gonna discuss that. Hopefully, they'll not totally take away the funding. But anyway, we're really accelerating into a crisis point of civilization, and the Epstein controversy kind of exposes just how corrupt these so-called leaders are of the free world. And even the conspiracy exposés on Epstein refused. They did not mention the connection to the leader of the so-called leader of the free world, Drumpf. So it's very, very fascinating, how much psychological denial there's been. Like in Whitney Webb's book, if you look it up, this Sarah Ransom is not discussed in connection to Donald Trump, when Sarah Ransom, said that Donald Trump routinely abused people at Epstein's mansion. So I don't know. Is she a limited hangout? I don't know.